I'm a professor of economics and business at the City College of the City University of New York. I also part of the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, and I'm also teaching as an adjunct professor at New York University. I've taught for many years at University of Pennsylvania. And I taught in different institutions, including Harvard and Tel Aviv University, Bar-Ilan University, Indiana University. Many universities, including I taught in Moscow, I taught in Ukraine, almost everywhere, in China, South Korea. Yeah, I have a long career of teaching and research. An economist is a person who tries to find different alternatives and evaluate them, put some numbers behind the alternatives in order to at least to economize on resources that are clearly on limited ground. They are not infinite. So somehow we need to economize, and the job of economist is really to do research and to advise policymakers what are the alternatives. Not to choose, but to tell them what are the alternatives, what are the opportunity cost of each alternative that they are going to propose. Economists are afraid to talk about the future. They will claim something like, no one can predict the future. But of course, we have a lot of experience from the past, and we are trying to learn from them. So, for example, the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, given that we looked at the past in 1929, 1933, even 1939, we understood that, the government cannot limit, or the central bank cannot limit the money supply. The government should supply more credit to the market in order to make sure that people will continue to be employed rather than going through bankruptcies that will lead to a domino effect. And, people will be out of work, which is maybe the most important job of an economist, is to make sure that you are on top or along the production possibilities frontier of the economy. So we would like to have very low unemployment. And this is what most economists will think, that this is the most important mandate of the central bank. The Central Bank of the United States has two dual purposes. One is to keep inflation low, and the other one is full employment. And of course, in times of unemployment, the purpose or the aim to reduce unemployment is very important. And we economists are trying to make sure that unemployment will be as low as possible. It's not always as achievable, but we are trying. It is true, and as a result, we are looking at the growth rate of the gross domestic product. We are looking at the increase in GDP, but in order to increase GDP, we need more resources, and one of them is, of course, labor resources. Technology is important, labor resources is important, and of course, the capital that is accumulated over the years. So I agree with you, but to some extent. In other words, if your income, per capita income is higher, you will put more money into education, you will put more resources into healthcare, you will put more resources into education, and so on. So there is a high correlation between gross domestic product per capita and other alternatives. Happiness, yes, that's something that is important. And we all know that all the Norwegian countries have higher degree of happiness and satisfaction relative to the, let's say, the United States and the UK and so on. So it's a question, and we do realize in the West that working, getting vacation, let's say 10 days a year, it's really not normal relative to Poland, relative to Norwegian places. I'm now visiting the University of Warsaw, and many of the people are saying one day after graduation, which will happen this Friday, everyone is going somewhere. So it's important. It may lengthen the life of the individual, but we are starting to look at it. And it's not clear that rich people are happier, but it's clearly true that if you have money, you can afford more health, more education, more vacation time, and so on. The balance is an issue. And I agree that the United States is moving to an extreme. And then I don't think that Poland is going to the extreme, but maybe in origin countries, for me, it's difficult to accept that you work between only 10 to 5. But maybe that's the right way, because I know that in Finland and so on, no one is responding to you if you email someone after 5 p.m. and you wait until next day. Maybe it's good. I don't know. Difficult for me to imagine that at 5 p.m. everyone in the United States or in Israel will, stop working and wait for the next day. It just, I don't know. When I'm calling these Nobel laureate people or other people, professors, they will pick up the phone right away, which means that they are working. They are not, sleeping somewhere. Balance is important. Family life is important. Taking care of children is important, and so on and so on. So I'm not dismissing it, but I think we need to increase productivity. Increasing productivity means that our income will be higher, and hopefully with this new income, we can do something for society, for philanthropic adventures, concerts, movies, and so on. I'm telling my students always, balance your life, which means go to a concert, go to a movie, go to swim, but then remember, you need to read the textbook. You need to do the work. So I agree with you. The issue of inequality is problematic, and we need to think about it, and so on and so on. In Germany, for example, they are moving to 4 days or 4.5 days work week, but I think they are doing it because they want to avoid unemployment. They want to make the German welfare state, if you want. But of course, the negative part is that many immigrants are coming to Germany and are trying to use the welfare state to their advantage. So again, you need to find a balance, and it's not always easy. Yes, if people are making a lot of money and they want to retire, I met a Polish professor who bought a house in Alicante in Spain. And I was there like 2 weeks ago or something. So I was surprised someone from Warsaw going to Alicante. But again, if you have the resources and you want to go to another place, buy a small place and enjoy life, I have no problem with it. Again, I'm sure that those people are working 8 months or 9 months as professors, and I assume that they work also from Alicante. They go to the beach, yes. They go to, taking a trip or whatever, but eventually they will sit down and write. So this is true about, I know Paul Krugman, I know other Nobel laureates that are traveling a lot, but still working. So a year ago I was in Venice with Paul Krugman, since you mentioned him, and he was revising his introductory books. So we met at, 6:30, 7 a.m., and until 9 he was working on his book and breakfast with me, and we discussed economics. And this is very characteristic. I know Finn Kidland, who is another Nobel laureate, doing the same, traveling a lot, but still working. I just emailed about a week ago Professor Sargent, who was my chairman on my PhD committee, again, Nobel laureate. And, he responded in a minute. So it was very clear that he is working. He's on email and so on. So I met Lars Hansen. Okay, so here is an example. Lars Hansen was in this Sardinia in Italy. And we got a beautiful room. It's really amazing. You can see the whole yacht and the port and everything. And Lars Hansen decided to stay in the hotel and work rather than going to the party at the evening. So you can see that people have a lot of responsibility and they take them very seriously. So, yeah, people are working and they keep working. All of them are beyond the age of retirement in Europe, but they are still working and so on and so on. So I think that the government can motivate it. The government can subsidize, for example, concert. I don't know, Shakespeare in the park. The government can subsidize some events that for the whole family. The government maybe subsidize daycare and so on. So this is where I see the role of the government. But subsidizing daycare, for example, will cause women to go out, women and men to go and work and so on. So there should be dual purpose in this. So yes, you go to a concert, yes, you can see all of these fireworks, yes, but you still need to work. Maybe the best example that I have is in China. They work like hell, but then you go to their fireworks and it's unbelievable. You know, for an hour, you can see all of this stuff in the sky and so on. So the government, on the one hand, provide you with this entertainment, but on the other hand, everyone knows that tomorrow you need to come, get up, and do the work. And they work very hard. This is a good question. And I think economists are very bad in forecasting the future. They are very good about explaining what happened in the past. So I wrote a few articles about the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, but this was after the fact. So you go back and you say, okay, this was a crisis and these were the regulations as a result of it. And of course, 5-7 years later, there is another crisis and so on and so on. So regulations are really responding to the past rather than to the future. And of course, in the case of the United States, most of the regulations after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009 were written by lawyers of the banks, okay? Because they have the resources, they have the incentive, and the government does not have the main power in order to really fight for the small individual. And that's always a problem. And we need somehow to defend the consumers, protect the consumers, but it's not easy. And the government is trying, but we are not very successful. And going back to your main point, we really cannot forecast the future. We don't. Who expected that Russia will invade Ukraine? Who expected that, you know, the price of housing will increase and increase and increase and suddenly drop dramatically? 30%, 50% in Nevada, in Florida, and so on. It's very hard to predict, and we don't know enough. This is also a difficult question, because on the one hand, we all talk about democracy. We all talk about how the democratic regime is better because people express their will and so on and so on. In reality, we see that this is not true. It's absolutely not true. There is a small group of people who decides. There are a small group within a party that decide and try to get as much power and as much resources as they can. You look at China, authoritarian regime, no one wants to live there, maybe, quote unquote. I'm smiling in some respect. But they are doing very well as far as the rate of growth of the economy. And what we really want is something like beneficial dictator. That economists talked about it all the time, right? So you want to maximize welfare utility. You want to maximize the utility of every individual, and we want to define how you maximize it, and so on and so on. We did some work in the past, like, 60, 70 years ago, and all of this work disappeared in the sense that we are not using it anymore. Because we really don't know, is the Chinese example good? Not to the small Chinese, right? Is it good for the regime? Is it good for the whole economy? Yes. China really increased the number of people out of poverty, right? Dramatically. Again, we can blame Cuba, for example, but in Cuba, people get healthcare. In Cuba, people get education. We can criticize the communism as much as we want, right? But under communism, people had healthcare, as good education. You cannot compare the education in Russia to education in United States, because the United States education is in low level, because we try to accommodate and look at the soul of the student, the soul of the individual. We are not supposed to tell him, no. We are not supposed to tell him what to do. And the result is that sometimes we spoil them. Sometimes we feel like don't hurt their feeling. But, in real life, if people don't understand that if they put their hands into the socket of the electricity, they will get, electrified, then there is a problem. We need to teach them. And if you don't go in the rain, if you don't, cross the road, if you don't do that, and so on, everything is, maybe you want to look to the left and to the right, maybe it's not, it's your decision. It's not going to work. It's just chaos. It's going to produce people that are not able to dare, people that are going to defend themselves. And you can talk about countries. That's the same story, right? If Poland will not invest in defense, then, someone will conquer it. Every time there is a vacuum, someone will get in. So the question is, are we ready? Are we preparing the new generation for cases where there will be financial crisis, when there will be crisis in their life, whatever it is? And I don't feel that people are ready to do it. And less in the West and much more in the East, in the way I see it. So again, Russia now is, my students in Russia are very rich. Their parents are rich, I assume, and as a result, they come with these fancy cars and so on and so on. But they know from their parents that their parents work hard, that their parents were suffering, their parents were taking risk. And I don't see people in the West today taking risk. The example that I see in the West, that, for example, people in the United States don't buy houses. People in Germany don't buy houses, they rent. Because they are thinking about maybe next year I will be here, maybe next year I will be there. And as a result, they are not building wealth. And they are not building wealth because they are uncertain about their fact. They are not willing to take risks. So buy a house in Berlin and either sell it later on or rent it out and move and buy another one or whatever. Create wealth. I don't see it in the West. People are really avoiding it. So I don't know. We need to look at these historical events and see why people are refraining from buying their own houses, why people are looking at their life here and say, well, I don't know what I will do next year. Maybe I will be somewhere else. As a result, in some countries, the welfare state is such that, the government provides you with everything. And as a result, first of all, foreigners look at it and say, okay, why don't I go there and enjoy the benefit of this? This explains all the immigration to the United States. This explains all the immigration to Europe, to France, to Germany, and so on, to Austria, and you feel to Denmark, and you feel, this will cause unrest because the inequality will increase, and it will increase dramatically. And some of these people really don't want to see the regime. They don't care about democracy. They care about their own niche, and as a result, there is a problem. And some of them are violent. They are willing to go to the street and, start burning the garbage and start attacking policemen. So there is no coherence in this case. I think Poland is okay, but if you look at France, if you look at Austria, you look at Germany, Sweden, the minorities, the immigrants, rather than adopting the system and working by the rules, are saying something like, I don't really care about the rules. I care about the rules as far as the government gives me all of these benefits. But do you want me to work, 12 hours a day, or 14 hours a day as a new immigrant families? I don't see it. I don't. It's very difficult because we have so much data that we don't know and we don't understand it and we cannot analyze it. So it's really every question, every data that you want is maybe available, all of this data, but it's very difficult to understand what it means. The numbers are not clear. So I don't know, for example, United States is spending so much per student on education, but the results are terrible, relatively speaking. So again, it's not what the money that you put in. Then there should be something which we don't measure. And if you look at the grades, they are not doing very well in international comparison, even though you spend more and more money on education per student. So something is wrong. What is wrong? I don't know. But you look at the high school, you look at the elementary school in the United States, the level is lower than in Europe. The bachelor degree, again, I'm not talking about University of Pennsylvania where I taught, or NYU and so on, but mostly it's not at par as education in, let's say, Warsaw. Students are more prepared, they have more mathematics, they have more knowledge of chemistry and physics and so on, of modeling, and as a result, they are better prepared. Now, you go to the PhD, that's a different issue. Now, suddenly, you pick only few people, relatively speaking, and suddenly you have all of these great universities in United States, in UK, and so on and so on. But if you look at the undergraduate, and there is a lot of disparities about undergraduate. Let me give you an example. In a private school, you have a TA in addition to the teacher. You have a recitation every week for 1.5 hours, and students are able to talk to someone who is like 2-3 years above their age, so they can somehow interact with him and so on and so on. If you go to the public school, public universities, there is no TA, there is no recitation, there is no. Yes, the cost is low, the price of education is low, but you don't get all of these benefits. Not to mention the networking, right? So you go to a good university, your parents pay a lot, I agree, but the point is that you build some network that later on will help you. Universal basic income. I think, in general, I will be for it, okay? I think it's the job of the government, the task of the government is to provide basic food, basic healthcare, basic education. I like the Polish idea that, universities is almost free. I don't like the fact that it's so costly in the United States. I think we are talking about like $92,000 a year if you don't have fellowship. If you multiply it in the United States by 4, not like in Poland by 3, you can see that this is something not normal in some respect. Yes, there are fellowships, there are whatever. But for example, we paid for our children with a bachelor degree. When they went to law school, this was like, I don't know, 120,000 or something. And one of them, it took him like 10 years, to pay for it. So I think education should be almost free. There is a problem with this stuff because, again, the students don't care because they don't pay. And the faculty don't care because they say, you don't pay for it, so give me thank you every time I open my mouth. So generally speaking, there is a problem here, but again, with a low tuition that will cause students to learn and teacher to be paid well and put effort into what they are doing, the cost in the United States does not make sense to me. I understand it supports the PhD programs, I understand it supports research, I understand everything, but it's very high. In order to make $92,000 net, you need to make 180, 170. Who is making it? It's really a toll, and the children are taking loans and they pay for it, and it's a huge amount. So President Biden is trying to elevate the problem and so on and so on. Again, he's doing it from political reasons, so I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. But again, it just does not make sense. In Israel, it's almost free, and people are happy. So again, when you get at the age of 22, with a loan of $100,000 or $120,000, this is something like a burden on yourself. And as a result, you don't buy a house. As a result, you don't get married earlier. And as a result, you don't have children earlier. Ta-ta-tam, ta-ta-tam, ta-ta-tam. And this is not good, because I believe that families are important and having children is important. And again, I think Poland is doing much better than United States in this respect. We are pushing our young people to work hard at the beginning when they should, devote more time for leisure and for social life and so on and so on. And people are frustrated. Suicide is going up and so on. So the issue of robotics, I think Paula Krugmana has a session about it. I think economists agree that there will be substitution of labor for robotics. And the question is, what do we do with all of these people that are going maybe to be unemployed? And I'm very optimistic. I believe that people will learn how to adapt and how to change. And I do see the AI revolution as important, as helpful for people, helpful for society. I'm not worried from these new adventures, new innovations. I think we should be happy that it's happening. I think we will find better solutions. As far as the ability to forecast, I doubt it, because I wrote and I was involved in doing some paper on chaos theory. And what is chaos theory? The idea is very simple. Let's assume you have a mountain like this one, and the drop of there is rain, and the drop can be either on the left side or to the right hand side. And as a result, you will get totally different results. So you cannot predict really, even though it's deterministic. You know that the rain will fall the way it will fall and so on and so on. So initial conditions are important in this case. And with chaos theory, we try to predict the stock markets, and we were not very successful. In other words, I don't think that for forecasting, I don't see, a difference. Even though I read now and then that people claim that they can forecast the trajectory of the missiles, for example, in war, and they can talk about people. It's more likely that this event will happen, and eventually it does happen, and so on. But I don't see it in economic data. The economy is too complicated, even with the big data analysis. It's good to have it. It's good to learn about it. It will show us, what we should avoid in the future. But again, the future is so dynamic that there will be something else. Is the AI revolution over? And, the new guy will come next time and there will be another innovation? Maybe. But right now, I think we benefit from it. So I'm all for it. And, let the best people invent and use it, and let's teach our students how to do it, and so on and so on. Well, every innovations were, at the beginning, people were mad at the Industrial Revolution, trying to, destroy the machines. You cannot avoid it. And better adopt it as soon as possible, because others will do it. So if you want to be in the frontier, you have to do it. So this brings us, to making sure that there will be no fraud. We need to make sure that there will be cybersecurity and all of these stuff that we need to protect in order to protect innovation and in order to protect property rights and so on, intellectual property rights. But I do see this revolution as important, and I do see it as useful for everyone, and we should adopt it rather than try to fight it, because if we don't, someone else will do it. So I don't know, I don't want to talk about Russia and Ukraine, but both of them should, adopt it. And it's true about Israel and other countries. If you don't, you will not survive. I don't see it. Central banks are important because they are able to respond to events that are not predicted. So, Bob Lucas, who followed Milton Friedman and teaching at the University of Chicago, always said something like, okay, we run an econometrics model based on the past, But if the policy change, then all these forecasts are not going to work because the regime change. You need human in order to make sure that if something will go wrong, you will steer the economy. So this rule of 2%, 3%, and so on, it's good. We should follow it. But let's look at different rule, okay? So people claim something like the government debt should be not more than 60%, government debt divided by GDP, 60%. The growth rate of the money supply should be no more than 3%. The government deficit should be not more than 3%. And then there was financial crisis. And suddenly Germany and United States and so on jumped to 120% debt to GDP ratio. And we, all economists say, okay, this is good, because otherwise it will lead to unemployment. Otherwise it will destroy the economy. So these rules are good at time of stability. A time when it's not stable, you should not follow the rules. And this can do central bank and not machines. Machines cannot predict what happened in 2008, 2009. Machine cannot predict what was in the head of President Putin. I think, well, I disagree here that people didn't know or should have known, but at least, many people claim that he will not invade Ukraine, right? And many other people say, yes, he will, but the machine cannot tell you this. Israel was surprised on October 7, right, by the Hamas. And no one could have predicted it. Yes, in retrospect, you can always claim, we saw it, we know about it, and so on and so on. But the response should be, you need to defend yourself in this case, or you need to change your rules, or you need to increase the money supply, and you cannot stick to 2-3%. In the long run, yes, but again, Keynes said, in the long run, we are all dead, right? So, not in time of instability, and there is a lot of instability today in the world. I don't know, you look at France, what is going on, you look at the UK, what is going on, you look at India, what is going on. You cannot predict all of this. We had the election in France, and everyone was surprised. And we are talking about big data and AI and all of the smart people that talk one day before about something, and just the opposite happened the next day. Big data is not going to solve it. The chaos theory was not able to solve it from my own research. So unpredictability is part of society. It's part of what we need to prepare ourselves. So taking risk, as I mentioned before, is something that should be part of us, part of the way we think. We cannot just say, okay, I'm going to avoid risk and sit in my home, close the doors, and so on. If you close your doors, someone will break into your house. So defend yourself. I disagree. It will be in some task. It will be faster. It will give us maybe more accurate results. But life is not an equation, mathematical equation, that you solve it. No, I don't believe that this is the case, that somehow the AI will give you the answer to every question that you post it. You can ask your cell phone, Siri, what is the temperature outside? Yes, they can give you. But if you ask Siri, what will be the temperature tomorrow? Well, it's with probability. It's not going to happen, right? We know that there is 40% chance of rain. What does it mean, 40%? It means that we don't know, right? We don't have certainty in life. And this is about the weather, where we have all of these satellites and all of these big data, and everyone claims that they can forecast. And the forecasting started with, forecasting what will happen tomorrow to the rain. And we are not able to do it after, 2,000 years. So do you expect that we will be able to do it? Well, even though I'm very optimist, let me tell you my opinion. Thus far, all of this AI is not able to solve, for example, cancer. Thus far, we have many, heart attacks. We don't know how to solve these problems. There are so many illness in the world that those machines are not able to to predict who will get it and who will not get it, how we will get it, and so on and so on. It will improve, yes, we can somehow invent maybe some medicines that will be, person-specific, maybe. But again, do you really think that people will not get sick? Do you really think that people will not somehow have a loss of life? Do you think that we can extend life forever because of this machine? And my answer is, of course not. Maybe at the margin. Maybe, again, it is not clear. We talked before about this idea that maybe people in Japan that are less affluent, or people in, I don't know, in other regime, maybe in Africa, that lives longer than people in the West, right? So this machine is going to tell you, live like an African guy or like in Japan, and you will live longer, or people in Poland, you're living longer than in United States. Can you figure out what to do, how to do it? I don't think so. Again, God created the world in such a complicated way that we cannot predict the future. We will know more, yes. There are, I don't know how to explain it. I think in the United States last week, 20 people died from hurricane, tornado. This is crazy, right? You may think, with all of this machine and with all of this stuff, I told you, why don't you build your house better? Why don't put this tree here, put this tree there? And as a result, people will not be killed, but they are killed. And there are landslides, and there is earthquake, and there are eruptions of, we cannot predict it. We claim that we know, but we don't. And we should be very modest about it. And we should really say we don't know. I think the best answer, we talked about it before, the best answer for economists and for any human being is, I don't know. I can prepare. I can look around, right? Look to the left, look to the right, look to the left. This is what you can do, that's all. You cannot predict that someone will take his car and, go on the pavements and, kill someone. Or you cross the road and someone will beat you. You cannot do it, I think somewhere I read that even in a house, someone was burned by itself. I don't know exactly what, because battery of bicycles. The battery of a bicycle exploded, and as a result, there was fire and someone was killed. And the woman had 8 children, and she saved all of them, but she died. Burned to death. Tell me about AI. Is AI going to help here? No, we just need to be more careful. We know that these batteries are problematic. We should put the bicycle somewhere else. We should be more cautious. And more cautious means, we should not be arrogant. We should not feel like we know that it will be okay. The only thing that is worse is for countries, Poland and others, to say, okay, it will be okay, don't worry, we don't need to arm ourselves, we don't need to prepare for war, we don't need to prepare for bad circumstances, we don't need to prepare for financial crisis, we don't need to prepare for, the euro disappear. And I think, what is missing, and that's what, what I'm thinking so much, is we should have in every university, for example, a group of people that will say, what if? What if, there will be demonstration? What if the student will break into the building? What if there will be murders? In the United States, it happens quite often that, not only universities, but sometimes high schools are attacked by some individual. Can you really predict it? Okay, so if you can predict it, how come it happens? So again, we need a group of people that will say, what if? Whatever you see today is not true, what if? And this is, and we need to prepare for it, because we have today more and more countries with nuclear power, and you don't know what they will do. What is North Korea going to do tomorrow? What is China going to do tomorrow with Taiwan? Do we know? Not really. And it depends on so many, you can claim, okay, if United States will be more stronger, or if United States will be more accommodating, and all of those scenarios. We need to analyze them. We need to think about them, but we cannot say this is a solution. This will be the result. We can just say, we need to prepare. We need to prepare. We need to think. We need to worry. There is this proverb in Hebrew that אשרי אדם מפחד תמיד. The happier guy is a guy who is always worried. So you can see that it's the opposite. In order to be happy, you need to not to be worried. But of course, the statement says that you should always be worried because you don't know what will happen. In order to be fully happy, you need to be worried because your happiness is transitory. Your happiness is momentarily true. In a moment, it can switch. And as a result, you need to prepare for it. You need to think about what if. What if you cross the road and you will get heart attack? All of the AI can help you? Not really. Let's assume you just walk and somehow you sleep in the road and suddenly you need all of these crunches. And for 2 months or 1 month, you cannot walk or cannot run or whatever. All of this you need to take into consideration. No. So again, this is a point. The point is that you know how to defend yourself. What do I mean? Look to the left, look to the right, look to the left. When you cross the road, look around, make sure, it's dangerous. When you use electricity, think about the possibilities that if something will go wrong, don't put the electricity close to a water, right? If you have a flood in your basement or whatever. You need to think about the worst scenario. The max-min solution in some respect in game theory. First of all, you find what is the worst case to you, and then you maximize, given the minimums that you found. This is the way, game theorists are thinking, and they are not solving anything. They are just telling you, this is a real life. Yes, this is why they are better in multitask. So you give a man and he will do something, maybe nice and perfect, or better, or I'm not sure even, but then women can do 12 tasks at the same time. And yes, we underappreciate the role of women in society. There are studies that shows that if there are 3 women on the board of directors, the company is doing better than if you have 0 or if you have 1 or 2 women. And apparently they are more worried, and as a result, they ask questions. And they prepare the company better, the corporation better, for bad scenarios. What are the job of all of these economists in the World Bank and the IMF and so on and so on? They are just worried about the next financial crisis, the next crisis. And this is their job. This is a board of director job. Not to tell the CEO what to do today, but what to do in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. Do we want to go to hydrogen? Do we want to go to electric? I don't know. Do we want to use nuclear? I'm against it, but again, there are many economies that are for it, totally for it. Look at France. They are using all of these nuclear reactors. You look at the guy from Chicago, and the guys that work in labor economics and so on and so on. Many of them are for nuclear power. It's clean, whatever. But I live in Pennsylvania. I remember, I was not there, but I remember the accident, the 3 Mile Island, and I don't think it's a solution. Nuclear is bad. Wind is good, sun is good, whatever you want to do it. Hydrogen maybe is okay. I don't know. We need to use AI and so on in order to make it better. Electric vehicles are maybe okay. But to go to nuclear, I don't think that's a solution. I think it's a bad solution. You just need to look at the people in Hiroshima. You need to look at the people in 3 Mile Island. I was involved in Ukraine, Chernobyl, right? So we had a fund that the United States paid for the Chernobyl fund and so on. People were, terrible. You could not enter to the place. And I interviewed some of them. It was really devastating. So I don't think that's a solution. It's from economic point of view, maybe, the probability of accident is low. I don't think it's very low, by the way, but okay. even if it's true, the cost to society is something we don't want to do. We don't want to engage. I don't know what Paul Krugman is saying, but that's my opinion. By the way, I disagree with Paul on many issues, so it's fine. I understand the problem. I'm just saying that the nuclear is not the solution. And, it's enough to say that you don't want it. You want it maybe as a weapon, to defend yourself, but you don't want it to use it in electricity in your home. It's not worth it. I think everyone will be willing to pay more in order to use a different technology. And we should invest more in this. AI and so on should help. Nuclear, I'm not talking about even the threat of terrorism, the threat of everyone that is not happy with whatever is going on in France or in Germany and going to attack it. All of these installations are really not defendable. They are not, no one can really protect them. No matter how much security we will put in and so on, there is always, if someone wants, if a terrorist organization will want, they will be able to use it. And you don't want to get into this danger. I told you before, you need a group of people that will say, what if? What if, the nuclear power plant will be occupied by someone? What if there will be some accident and, some of it will go to the air and so on and so on. Remember Chernobyl? This was, and Japan is using all of this nuclear and so on. And again, I don't know. It's an interesting question about China. I don't think they are using nuclear, right?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah.
Because again, if they do, it's strange for me because I know that in Beijing, they are using coal plant. And of course, people are dying as a result of it. So I think if you live in Beijing, you live 3 years less than if you live in Shanghai, because Shanghai is in the south and they are not using as much coal in the winter relative to Beijing and so on and so on. And of course, living 3 years less is subject to a lot of questions, whether this is just because of the coal and ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Again, AI may answer this question, I doubt it, but I don't see nuclear as a solution, really. Cleaner does not mean nuclear. For me, cleaner is just a propaganda. It's like a game theory. If you say cleaner and you mean nuclear, this is not clean. Because in case of accident, it will be devastating. It's so clear to me that accident happens, It's not every 20 years there will be an accident. And, if you're a politician in Japan and you will start continuing using nuclear, and it happened once, it happened second time, the third time, people will be prosecuted. So yes, so there are advancements in it, and there are places in Scotland and so on where you can generate a lot of wind technology. You can use the sun in the Middle East. Israel is using it a lot. In California, we are using it a lot. The problem is that I think United States subsidized this industry so much that once the subsidies went out, they fell. But again, you need to find the balance. You cannot subsidize it 100%, because the result is that, people that are not, you don't have an incentive to invent because you get the subsidy from the government. So the technology is fine. And as long as we will get from the government money, we are making money, and we need to look at the short run, because in the long run, we'll find another event, another subsidy from the government. But I don't see nuclear as a solution. What's wrong with Arizona and Texas and so on? They have a lot of oil, but they have also a lot of sun and a lot of wind. So there is this program that economists suggested, like cap and trade. So you can motivate people by giving them carrots rather than punishing them. So this is maybe the way to go. So I know that Graciela Chichilinsky from Colombia is working on it. Jeffrey Sachs worked on it for a while. So yes, I'm all for all of these solutions that are carrots rather than punishment. But in some cases, you need punishment. In some cases, people are abusing their abilities to pollute the environment, and they should be prosecuted. And the way to do it is like what we did with others, which is, it's criminal to do it. And as a result, the CEOs is responsible. There was in the United States the rules that CEOs start signing the financial accounts, and suddenly the profits were much less, and suddenly everything was better because people were afraid that once they sign, they can be prosecuted. So yes, we cannot count on the goodwill of people. We need sometimes to monitor it. And cap and trade is a good solution, I think, yes. Do I have a better solution? Not now. But eventually we can measure better the cost to society, the externalities involved. And as a result, maybe we can do better. We can align the cost to the benefits. And if not, we should, people who pollute should pay more than the cost to society. And as a result, we will give them incentive to economize on pollution. Okay, so I don't know. I disagree. And I don't think that you should expect the United States today to give China a lot of, subsidies, because the United States for the last 300 years produced a lot of pollution, right? And as a result, no, now you have to pay for it, and China is allowed to pollute because they are in a different stage, or South Africa is in a different stage. I don't think that's a solution that is acceptable by the public, by the American citizen, by the French citizens, and so on and so on. And we need to look at solutions that will make sense to the individual. I understand that India is polluting and China is polluting, but many years ago, not many years ago, but for many years, I visited China almost every year. And in every conferences, many of the papers were about the environment. They are aware of it. They want to fight it. It's in their interest. China is a big country. I mean, the area of China is huge, and they are aware of it, and they should treat it. They should take care of themselves rather than asking, United States to pay for it or other countries. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, before, like 5 years ago, and it does not make sense to me now, because again, you should not expect the United States to cure the pollution of the world or to somehow subsidize the pollution. There is technology. The technology is they can sell it, they can buy it. It's really in the interest of these big countries. And most of the countries are big, relatively speaking. There are externalities, I'm not denying it. But it's more problem of Europe. Countries are relatively small relative to countries in Africa or countries everywhere else. United States can take care of itself. Canada can take care of itself. And to expect United States to pay for Chinese pollution today just because they did it before, this is a crazy idea for me. I don't think that I will support it. I don't know. So there is a smart person called the Rambam, according to Jewish tradition. And the Rambam says that you always need to choose the midpoint. Not right, not left, just, try to get the midpoint. And in many discussions in the Talmud, the Israeli, the Jewish law books and so on, they talk about the majority rule at the end. So there is disagreement on the A, there is disagreement on the B, but eventually you have to choose the midpoint. And if there is no agreement, then go by the majority. And it's interesting because there are stories that says, one of the rabbis in the minority says, okay, if I'm right, you know, the river will go the opposite side. The river flow from north to west from north to south. Now the river will move from south to north because I'm right, and God will tell you. And the river really moved to the other side. And the answer of the rabbis will say, well, God is in the sky. We are here. We are deciding. So again, it shows you that majority rule is the way to do it when there is disagreement. And we should always move to the center. And that's what's going on in the election. You can see it on the right, you push on the right, and the left, you push to the left. But before the election, the two sides are coming closer to the center because they want to capture the central constituents. So it's good to listen to what the left says, and it's good to listen to what the right says. And there are some things that you disagree totally, right? You don't want racism, you don't want Nazism, you don't want fascism, and all of those words, anti-Semitism. But there are some ideas that are important, and we need to think about it. It's not one of the best economic model in international economics that is used by all central banks today is based on Ricardo. Ricardo in 1817 wrote a book, okay? And what is his model? His model is, to make it simplified, 2 countries, 2 commodities, 1 input. The 1 input, the 1 source is only labor. And you think about it, this is not normal because we need capital, we need land, and we need all of these other sources and resources in order to produce. But still, the best model today to forecast trade between 2 countries, between many countries, and so on, is using this Ricardo idea. So the fact that later on people develop model like 2 by 2 by 2 in the simplified way, 2 countries, 2 commodities, 2 inputs like labor and capital, those models are not doing well. They are not forecasting the relation of trade between 2 countries. And it's shocking in some respect because intellectually it's great idea that you include more inputs, more resources, you take into account more data, and the answer is not. In reality, you stick to the simple. So we need to appreciate the fact that people talked about labor as important. It's not, only Karl Marx and Engels and so on. There are some ideas there that we need to think about it. Because at the end, we should agree that the labor are important, or human being, and not the machines. We need to think about it. This is amazing that the model that is used today is based on one laborer or different kind of qualities of laborer. But the point is, it does not include capital and land and so on as one of the factors that are doing that are. And the technology today, you can buy it, right? You can steal it. Some countries are doing it. And in this way, we are advanced. So I'm also for open economy, for open data, for open sources. But again, you need to defend some copyright, property rights, and so on and so on. People need to be rewarded for the work. I don't know, I went a few days ago to an event, 100 years to Charles Aznavour, and he was pushing, apparently I didn't know that, even though I should have known about it. In United States, when you write a song, you have 95 years copyright. In Europe, it's only 50 years. And he was lobbying to move from 50 years to 95, claiming that it's defending the abilities of people to write songs and so on and so on. So of course I'm against it. I want to go to 50. So 50 is enough. But the point is that we need to defend property rights in some respect. So young people will jump into this profession and write programs and do better. Let me give you an example. There is today, almost every university is using a program called R in economics. So the R program is lousy. It's terrible, but it's open source. And as a result, many people write subroutines. And these subroutines are so good that they are as good as SAS, which is another program that costs a lot of money, or Stata that costs a lot of money, and so on. So again, the human brain, the human innovation is important. People contributed to this, and there is this community of open source. And I'm all for it, and I think this will advance knowledge and culture. So my opinion about radical views is, as long as it's only views, point of view, let's discuss, let's talk about it, think about this possibility, I'm all for it. If this will lead to action, then we need to be very moderate. We should go to the center. We should not try to adopt very extreme left or extreme right. This is wrong. But we should appreciate it. We should talk about it. We should think about it, and so on. Let me give you an example. Some individual can claim, okay, let's divide all the wealth equally among everyone. And the other one will say, no, let's, the rich people or the more productive people get more benefit of the cake, of the national cake. We need to talk about these two issues. And we need to understand that once it comes to action, we don't want one and we don't want two. We don't want, one individual to have all the wealth of the country, and we don't want, equal division of wealth, because in this case, no one will have an incentive to work. Look at the Israeli example of the kibbutzim, right? People were lazy, not because they didn't have a desire to work. This is just because the incentive was wrong, right? If the incentive is you don't work and you get the same cake as someone else, so you don't work. And that's exactly what's going on in Europe, right? When you benefit from the welfare state, and as a result, you don't, put enough effort in order to find a job, in order to work, in order to be productive, and so on and so on. So again, as point of view, yes, we need to look at the extreme. And, as an economist, you're right, we are looking what will happen at zero, what will happen when you take the derivative to infinity, when you take it to the plus and minus. Yes, as views, as analysis, yes. But are we really going to be at infinity? Of course not. We don't know what it is, right? Are we going to be at minus infinity? Of course not. So as far as action, we need to be at the center. As far as point of view, everyone should express his point of view, as long as it's not violent, not calling for violence, as long as people are, respecting each other. So, and again, I'm going to this Judaism background that I have. In the Talmud, they talk about Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. Bet Hillel is a guy who is always accommodating, and Shammai is most stringent. And there are only 18 examples where the stringent point of view is accepted. But in the thousands of others, it's always going to be lenient. So choose leniency. Don't force the public to do something that is difficult for them to do. And that's exactly the idea of, go to the center. Everyone is not perfect. Everyone is making mistakes. Don't punish everyone for every small mistake, just because you don't believe that you don't see the light that you think is the light. Well, it didn't work because, as you know, they become now more privatized, right? They have this huge amount, they have now huge amount of land that the government gave them many years ago for free. And now they are become richer because they have all of this stuff and they become privatized. And I think the problem was that, they were, it doesn't matter where you work, you got equal share. So people who work outside, for example, and made a lot of money, needed to bring the money into the system, right? And people who were the head of something, I don't know, growing sheep, let's just work very hard. And the others were, sometimes coming, sometimes not coming. So of course, it caused a lot of tension among them, and eventually it disappeared. So there are not real kibbutzim, as far as I know today, that are sharing all of this equally and so on and so on. Equal sharing is not working. Again, it can work with a very small group, maybe. But again, even with a family, you can see that people are not, sharing equally. You don't see, even with your children, that one of them is doing the same amount of effort as the others, and so on and so on. People have their own personality, people have their own incentive, people have their own experience in life, and as a result, they are doing differently, acting differently. It's true, and again, in the kibbutzim, it worked at the beginning, right? Because no one had a lot, and as a result, when you don't have a lot, you need to count on other people, and as a result, you share. But once you have more and more and more, and you accumulate, and you walk outside and you make money, and suddenly you see someone who has a car because he's walking outside, and he needs a car, to go, ta-ta-tam. So suddenly, this guy is also going to the beach on Saturday or Sunday. And I cannot because I don't have a car, or I need to ask for it, and so on and so on. And eventually it broke. Okay, so it's difficult, but we need to monitor it. We need to make sure that people will use their own talent rather than just go to WeChat and let WeChat play with it and give them the answer, and so on and so on. I think eventually we will find a way to test and check that they are not using only WeChat. And once we will have this technology, I'm sure that the university will adapt. We have a problem today with Zoom. For example, we are testing students on Zoom. And of course, there are better ways to test students. And we know that students are doing very well when they take exams on Zoom. I just had an experience at New York University. I gave the first exam was on Zoom, multiple choice question, and student got like 23, 24, 25 out of 25. Then the second exam, and this was like 30% of the grade. The second exam was 50% of the grade, 20% was their participation. So I gave the student, listen to this, I gave the student, just because they show up to class, 1% of their grade. It's relative, so it doesn't matter. Because if everyone comes, then relatively it's not going to affect the grade. But the point is, just to participate because it's summer, ta-ta-tam. But in any case, in the 50%, it was open book, not open book, exams that I gave them hard copies, and suddenly you can see the difference. And I gave them multiple choice and I gave them open questions. And I was worried about the multiple choice because they did so well on the first exam that I thought I would not have distribution. But guess what? I had distribution from the multiple choice. I told the student, I'm sorry that I force you to answer the open questions because I already have distribution, and it was matching. People who did well on the open question did well on the multiple choice question, and so on. So yes, we don't know how to test given the situation. I know that there are some systems where they can check if you move your head and so on and so on. It's cumbersome to the teacher, and as a result, I'm not using it, and I'm sure many people don't use it. Eventually, we'll do something about it. So right now, I'm teaching summer session in City College, City University of New York, and I told them that the exam will be Zoom because it's called asynchronized. So you don't meet really with the student and so on and so on. So I told them the exam will be on Zoom, but it will be, you need to open your camera and so on and so on. And of course, because I'm in Poland and they will be in United States, I told them the exam will be between 8 to 9 a.m. and we'll see if the student will respond to it. But again, it's a problem. You give them hard copy, you get different result than if you put them on Zoom. And today that all the test bank are, the student copies the question and they get the answer. So with WeChat or not WeChat, AI or not AI, they have the answer. So I don't believe in eternal life, but I do believe that people can live up to the age of 120. I think we can reach it. We just need to know what is the formula to do it. And with advance of medicine and so on, we will do it. Again, if you look at the innovation in agriculture, the people were 80, 90% of the people were working in agriculture, and today it's like 3%. So, and then we moved to manufacturing, and today we talked about robots and so on. So yes, I think we will be able to extend life. not to infinity, but for 120, yes, it's reachable. Maybe not in my generation, but my children's generation, if not my grandchildren generations. But still, we have all of these diseases that we don't know how to solve them. Now, we talked about medicine or disease. There are also diseases that are caused by men, like war, like floods that you can avoid, like all of the other stuff that people are doing it just because it's easier for them to do, like pollution. So I think it's a good idea for Poland not to join the euro currently. I think you need this monetary policy in order to counter and act towards what is going on in the real world. I think the euro hurt some countries like Greece and Portugal and Spain, and maybe even Italy. Right now, the euro exists, and I am all for it. So I don't think that people should run away from the euro, countries that are within the euro, using the euro. But I think for Poland, it's much better to stay with the zloty, have their monetary policy. And you can see that Poland is doing much better than other countries. I thought that it was a mistake by Poles, but maybe you didn't have a choice to have your mortgage linked to the Swiss franc. I knew that it's going to be a problematic issue. Listen, Switzerland is a rich country. You cannot get citizenship there. No one can get it. So the idea that you relatively not rich country per capita trying to link their mortgage to the Swiss franc does not make sense. It's better to link it even to the dollar than to the Swiss franc. Swiss franc is a strong currency, and I don't know, everyone anticipated that they will value the currency. So it was a big shock to some people, and including you, right? So yeah, but I knew we talked about it. So again, economists have some ideas of what is wrong. You should borrow with your own currency. You should not borrow by foreign currency. Foreign debt is bad, and domestic debt is not important. That should be the rule. You can always inflate your own currency. You cannot inflate foreign currency. Yes, the government should issue these mortgage bonds, and the government is big enough in order to do it and not cause people to suddenly, lose 30% of their mortgage or whatever, the value of their mortgage. That's not normal. People are going to commit suicide.